Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I am doing a response video to a different Greg at Supposedly Fun. Now, Supposedly Fun did a video of the 25 best books published in the last 25 years. And I watched his video, and I honestly did not think much of a lot of his choices because his reading tastes are very different from my own. Now, that does not mean that his books are not the best, because his books may be better than mine. That the choices that people read are very different on how we judge a book to be the best book or even a great book. And I've seen a few other people do this challenge, Brian at Bookish. And again, I was struck about how few books cross over with what I would consider to be the best books of the last 25 years. Now, both these lists are fiction. So I'm going to stick with fiction on my list. So these are going to be the 25 best fiction books of the last 25 years. And I'm using best very loosely. Really, you should just say the 25 great books published in the last 25 years. Because saying one book is better than the other, or this is the best book, and the other book is a lesser book, that's really getting into troublesome territory. So I'm going to do this as the 25 great books from the last 25 years. And here we go. Now, since this is 25 books, I am going to be only giving a very brief description of each book. And I have alphabetized all these books by author, and it's not any sort of ranking whatsoever. And I, of course, have a clipboard because I can't keep these in my mind. So here we go. The First Law Trilogy, The Blade Itself, Before They Are Hanged, Last Arguments of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. Now, right away, I'm combining 3 books into one because these are a trilogy, but they do actually tell one coherent story. And a lot of the reason that this book is included is I really don't read a lot of fantasy. A lot of fantasy I just find rather boring. But this one's different. This is what's known as grimdark. The characters are flawed. They are imperfect. And they have one absolutely delightfully evil character who is a torturer. And he's my favorite character of the series. Number 2, 4321 by Paul Auster. This is a story of a Jewish boy who leads 4 lives based off one event that changed in his childhood. This is not science fiction. 2666 by Roberto Baleno. This is really 5 interconnected novellas into one gigantic book. It was translated from the Spanish, and it is about literary theories, about authors, about murder. The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. 2 Jewish boys before World War II write a superhero comic. Absolutely fabulous. Vernon Subutex Trilogy by Veronica Dupont. Again, combining books in a trilogy. This is about a record store owner who becomes homeless and much more. Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann. A suburban housewife has thoughts during the day as she is baking or she cooking. And it is essentially one gigantic sentence, a run-on sentence, but a 1,000-page sentence with some breaks about a loose panther. Faithful Place by Tana French. This is a police procedural mystery, and it shows that mysteries can be literature too. Commonwealth Universe, Pandora's Star, Judas Unchained by Peter F. Hamilton. This is epic space opera, and it is just a great example of what science fiction can do with an exciting story. The Goneaway World by Nick Harkaway. Nick Harkaway is the son of Jean Le Carré. It is his first book. It is a book that Nancy Pearl of the Seattle Library said, you will read 2/3 of this book and you will immediately want to turn back to page 1 and say, how could I have possibly missed that plot twist? Really good. The Orphan Master Son by Adam Johnson. This is the story of life in North Korea before our current North Korean leader, or the current North Korean leader, came into power. It was about his father. And it is just devastating how bad life can be in North Korea. The Fisherman by John Langan. This is a horror novel about grief, and when you grieve so hard, what you may do to obtain the death of your loved one's return. Ohio by Stephen Markley. My friend Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics does not think much of this book, but I think it is a story about grief and loss and friendship, about people who have troubles in their lives. In Paradise by Peter Mattiessen. Peter Mattiessen had a long career as a novelist and nonfiction writer. And this is his story about Auschwitz, about going to visit Auschwitz and think about what was done there. Jerusalem by Alan Moore. Alan Moore is mostly known for the writer of some graphic novels. This is, again, a gigantic novel, over 1,200 pages long. It includes a play, a poem, an invented language, all interspersed into an afterlife, and an afterlife that has never been envisioned before. The Sympathizer by The Sympathizer by Viet Thong Nguyen. This is a story mostly set during the fall of Saigon about a Vietnam man who becomes a spy. It won the Pulitzer Prize. The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock. This is set from World War II to the 60s, and it involves some rather nasty and unsavory characters who have a very strong religious bent. And I really liked it because this was a book, a first novel, from the author who was a working class man who decided to start writing in his 50s. Well worth reading. House of Sons by Alistair Reynolds. This is one of the really fabulous science fiction novels that can be written and can show exactly what science fiction can do. It is a story of a woman who cloned herself into many different entities, and every 1,000 years, these entities gather together to talk about the universe. And this story takes place over millions and millions and millions of years. The Plot Against America by Philip Roth. This novel is sometimes considered science fiction. I think that's pushing the definition of the genre. Again, this is an alternative reality where Lindbergh becomes the president of the United States and starts a fascist regime to push the Jews out. This book is important because it shows how easy America can be turned to fascism, because that is an issue that could happen today. And people who read this book can say, yeah, there are a lot of parallels. I originally read this shortly after it was published, and I liked it okay. When I reread it in 2017, I was much more attuned to the power of a fascist ruling this country. A novel people really should read. Clyde Fans by Seth. This is a graphic novel. It is loosely based on the artist and author walking up to an abandoned storefront that used to have a building called Clyde Fans. And it is the story of two brothers and how they raised a business and lost a business and grew old. There is an opening part of this book about an old man reminiscing, and it's one of the saddest stories I have ever seen in a graphic novel. The Terror by Dan Simmons. This is an historical horror novel set on a ship in the 19th century that was searching for the Northern Passage. And it got stuck in the ice. And in the ice, there is something dwelling. Good example of historical fiction and horror. It works really well. Cryptonomicon by Neal Stephenson. Neal Stephenson is more widely known as a science fiction author. Cryptonomicon often gets labeled as science fiction, even though that's pushing it. It's more of a historical novel of Alan Turing during World War II and how he created the computer that would solve Enigma. It also features stories in the current day about a little bit of a secret that was hidden there. The Far Field by Madurai Vijay. Totally muffin up that pronunciation. But this is a story of an Indian woman who learns that her mother had an affair with a lower caste man. And it is the story of this woman who goes to find that man in a war-torn area of India that is basically under martial law. And I found it totally fascinating because it brought me to a part of the world that is suffering some strife, but I never really knew that much about it. The Dying Grass by William T. Vollmann. This is a novel in his Seven Dreams series. Now, his series is in no way interconnected. This is with other books. This is a thematic series about encounters with Europeans and Native American Indians. And this story is set in 1877. And the Nez Perce Indians have been forcibly removed from their reservation, and they're being sent on a march out west. They are not happy, and they start a war. Now, in this, the Americans are not the good guys. The Indians, while there's a lot of sympathy that Vollmann gives to the Indians, they're not really the heroes either. Each side is flawed, seriously flawed, but there's also some good in each side. So it presents a very strong characterization of each. And it has a very unusual writing style where he uses paragraph indents increasingly as people have thoughts and their thoughts change, then change again, and then change yet again. And this book is very, very long. It is about 1,400 pages with endnotes. But it is one of the best books that Vollmann has ever written. It may be his best fiction book. The other candidate would be Fathers and Crows, but that is outside of this 25-year window. And it's A place you can start with Volman. Probably not the best, but you can. The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This is an historical novel. It is about a young man who's very smart and maybe going places, even though he's African American. But he gets involved in an incident, hitchhiking, where a man has stolen the car. And because he's young and he's black and he's in a stolen car, even though he did not steal the car, he gets convicted and is sent down to a youth facility for offenders and has a really bad time in this facility. And I really saw the injustice done to the blacks during this era through this book. The Border Trilogy by Don Winslow. It includes The Power of the Dog, The Cartel, and The Border. This is about a drug agent in Mexico trying to bring down the cartels. And it was originally written as a standalone novel, The Power of the Dog, but the author could not resist returning to these situations because drugs in Mexico and crossing the border is a serious issue. And one of the issues that the author brings up is that Americans are to blame for a large part of the violence in the drug cartels because we have a demand for their drugs. And that is what fuels the crime. And that is what makes this a great example of not only a crime novel, but the social ills that our country is bringing onto itself. Well, that is the end of my list. Now, supposedly fun listed his top 5. And I'm going to list my top 5 too. My top 5 are going to be 2666 by Roberto Baleno. And number 4 is going to be The Plot Against America by Philip Roth. Because we really need to understand how fascism can come to America. Number 3, Fateful Place by Tana French. Because it shows just what a mystery can do. Number 2, 4321 by Paul Auster. And in my top place is going to be The Dying Grass by William T. Bowman. Thank you for watching and keep on reading.